Okay, we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is the number. Nick Christensen right over there. He and I are both hacking our lungs up, but that's okay. We're staying far enough away from our guests that they can't possibly be harmed. We put them inside of hermetically sealed bubbles.
Quarantine.
But anyway, Chris Behan joining us here in the studio. Chris is the Associate Director of Missoula Redevelopment Agency. And I know that people have read about this agency, for the last several years about various things that they're doing. If you would mind giving us a little brief history of what the organization is and what you do.
Sure, Peter. Thanks for having me on today. I think probably before I talk about what we do, and probably better mention how we do it.
Right.
Because I think that's where some of the confusion comes in sometimes. First of all, way back in the 1980s, doesn't seem that long ago for some of us, the state created urban renewal law, in which allowed cities and towns to designate a certain area in their town that needed some work. And there's actually, I think, 15 different criteria that have to be met to look at one of those areas and declare it an urban renewal district. Those range everything from lack of water and sewer to the things you would normally think of when you think of an urban renewal area.
Now, who makes that determination?
That's the city council can make that decision. That's a local tool.
Right.
Along with that, to allow things to happen, the state legislature at that time passed a law that allowed tax increment financing, or TIF, or TIF. It's all known by the same thing, which is essentially the increased taxes due to new development in that little area. So I like to think about it like a cake. If you were to take a cake and slice it that had frosting on it, for a period of time, all the taxing jurisdictions continue to get their cake. But as the frosting grows on there, the more frosting you have, that's scraped off, and that's used to build up those areas and make them a better part of the community. One of the things that typifies all urban renewal districts all across the state, including here in Missoula, is that one way to look at them is that they're net tax users. There's higher crime rates, higher fire problems, higher problems with infrastructure. And oftentimes that means that investors in the private sector avoid those areas, avoid fixing them up, because they can't afford to address those problems. And that's why the tax increment financing, if those people will go in there, fix things up a little bit, and the taxes go up, that a little bit of increased tax gets rolled back in there, just a constant recycling over and over and over again. Another thing that I oftentimes think in metaphors and pictures.
That's fine.
But I think about that whole mechanism kind of like being like oil in a car engine, is that, it gathers for a while and then it goes up, and it's essential to making things work. It isn't the thing. It isn't the motor, but it helps make things work and work well.
If you don't have oil, you don't have much of a motor.
That's exactly right.
That's for sure.
That's what we do. There's a limited time frame for those things to exist. So it's bring it up, make them a contributing part of the community, and then release it so everybody gets to enjoy whatever was built there.
And then after that point, after they've had that assistance, then they're kind of on their own with everybody else. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And oftentimes, like in the downtown area here, we'll start, what we did here. That was back in the 70s when the mall was created and the Brook Street corridor was booming. A lot of businesses moved out of the downtown, and a lot of the bigger businesses. And downtown really started going downhill. No one was investing in anything. At one time, then Mayor Toole said you could shoot a cannon down Higgins Avenue at any time during the day or night and not be afraid of hitting anything.
Wow.
And I think, whereas that might not have been true, but it was pretty bad. And
he was the master of turning phrases.
Oh, absolutely. So,
yeah.
Well, and I assume you guys have more have projects that require more assistance than others, right? That require maybe some more funding. I was hoping you could talk about some of the projects you guys are working on now.
Sure. Well, to bring it forward just with the downtown, that is probably one of the prime examples of how this all works in the entire state, because it was down pretty far, and now downtown, with the exception of a couple of small spaces along the river, is really thriving and doing well without any tax increment financing.
I do know that there has been quite a discussion about sandwich boards now, because there's a discussion about how many sandwich boards can be on Higgins, because the streets or the businesses that are on those side streets, they want to get traffic, right?
Yeah.
So people are walking down Higgins, they say, oh, ABC, whatever, it's right down this way. Well, if there's too many of those, then people can start tripping over them, and there has to be some sort of, a rule to tell you how many there can be.
Part of my job, Peter, is to actually kind of open things up and look at the silver lining on that. Too many sandwich boards means there's a lot of businesses downtown vying for your dollar.
Right.
That wasn't the case for a long time. Tim France once said to me when somebody was complaining about parking, the owner of Warden's, parking, I can't find parking. And he looked at the fellow and said, yeah, I was doing business down here when parking was not a problem at all. So it helps.
Right.
Nick, in the downtown area, we touched in one way or another, generally with infrastructure. That's what you can spend taxing and refinancing funds on, is pretty much the public infrastructure. So the things that go along with a private development that are necessary, but often cost a lot of money and are not equity building for the lenders and bankers. So they have to come out of the developer's pocket. That impacts the end result. If they go ahead and build, you might not get as good a product, or you might be able to, or they won't just leave. So I think around town, downtown, we touched almost every building. Most recently, I would mention that we kind of had to swing back and create another urban renewal district down toward the river. The Mercantile Hotel, that'll be open in a couple of weeks for everybody to look at. That was unfortunate. I spent much of my career trying to find new and better uses for that building. It just got to a point where it wasn't going to work. So we helped there. The things you can use tax increment for in that case were demolition and removal of the building and the public infrastructure. And that was an area that actually nearby, not right there, actually had wooden water mains still. Wow. So we had to upgrade the public facilities.
Now, one thing I really wanted to get in focus, because whenever people hear about tax increment financing, okay, the first thing they think is, oh my gosh, my taxes are going up. Oh, right. Last thing. So if you could just differentiate between tax increases and tax increment financing, that would be great.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate bringing that up, because it's a good thing to explain.
I'm a rank layman. So
you bet. In a tax increment district or an urban renewal district using tax increment, there is no fee. There's no increase in tax because of that. Now, the value of your property might go up if you change something, and that's the tax increment. So you would expect, if you had a vacant lot and it paid $1,000 in taxes a year, and you put in a building there, a hotel, that paid $10,000 a year in taxes, you would expect that, because you now have a hotel that you're going to pay taxes on. That is tax increment. It's usually not that dramatic, but as value goes up, there is an increase for those folks. Now, unfortunately, the way Missoula County kind of arranges tax bills in those areas, it makes it look like a taxing organization. We can't tax anybody.
Right.
What it is the same taxes that would normally be paid. It's just that some of it goes somewhere else. So it's not a new tax. It's where the existing tax is going to go. And for a time, it's recycled in that same area to build it up.
Okay, so we have a Facebook question, Nick.
Yeah, Kathy wanted to know, is the Bridge to Nowhere part of the TIF project?
The Bridge to Nowhere being in Alaska?
I have no idea.
The Bridge to Nowhere she's referring to across Reserve Street here.
Yeah.
Oh, it was an urban renewal project.
The walking bridge.
Yeah, it was. I would disagree that it goes nowhere.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in the neighborhood really appreciate their kids being able to go to the new park safely, not have to try to dodge traffic on Reserve Street. I think that...
Well, if I remember correctly, when that project was first created, there were lots of different options. Some wanted to do an underpass, some wanted to do a bridge, some wanted to do a ginormous traffic thing with when Reserve and Brooks is literally a block away, and so that made it really tough. So so the bridge seemed like to city planners the right way to go. Not only that, but it's supposed to be removable. So if we ever do anywhere those mega loads in, it is possible to remove it and use the road. Is that correct?
That's correct. It is a state highway, so they had to give permission. The Department of Highways had to give permission for that bridge to go across. One of their conditions was that it had to be removable. So there's two ways for a mega load to get, if they happen to come up 93 or 12 and 93 again.
Which hasn't happened for many years.
Quite a while, but it could again. There's two ways. They can either go through the fort, and that's open, or they could go through here, and it is able to be picked up and moved over, and you can drive through. Reserve Street's a tough one because there are so many power lines and lights and so on. It turned out was the only one for a while, and it'll work. But the bridge is open. It can be opened up. That right now it is exceeding all expectations in terms of use. Bicycles going down the Bitterroot, bicycles going back and forth, pedestrians, school groups, and so on are using it an awful lot. In terms of all the different options you're talking about, not only was this the best location to serve the most number of people, it was also an area, it was also one of the least expensive ways. It is a lot of money to put that much steel in the air. But if you can imagine tunneling underneath 5 lanes of traffic and what that would have been in terms of disruption, but also the cost, that was going to cost a lot. Moving down, up or down the street just did not serve the proper number of people.
We're going to take a quick break. Lines are open. 721-1290 is our number. If you'd like to visit with Chris Behan, he's Associate Director of Missoula Redevelopment Agency, here to answer your questions. If you have thoughts, we'd love to hear from you. 721-1290. We'll be back in a moment.
Where would you like to go on that text?
Doing great, man.
I got cake in it. The tax increment stuff. Is that enough?
I didn't know they referred to that bridge as the bridge to nowhere. So I was confused.
Originally, the North Reserve Bridge was the bridge to nowhere. Remember they built that before?
Oh, right, yeah. Well, and I like to talk
It truly
about,
dropped off, though.
Yeah.
when we talk about that bridge too, I like to talk about the bicycle tourism value of
True.
it. So
Yeah.
Go for
it
it.
was the last piece.
Well, that whole
in
thing was
that
part of a tiger,
whole-
right?
Right.
I know most people just complain about the lack of use, according to them. You know, they just say, I don't see people using it. What's the point of it? But I see people using it.
Well, there are counters on it that measure bikes and pedestrians.
Yeah.
So they can separate them.
Mhm.
And it's doing pretty well.
Well, it's not going anywhere, I can tell you that.
Well, we don't know that. You could move it. No, right?
Yeah, you can move
All
it.
right.
That would really look nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you first.
That's right. For those people who want to do swan dives you can run up the ramp.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, right. And I thought it was pretty interesting that they decided to, the way that's built up so that you can't just climb up the top and jump over. You know, they really made it difficult.
Or throw things.
Use it for, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we have Dave on the line. You will need your headphones for this. So
I love the headphones.
we got to get a photo of you with your headphones. Okay, here we go. Get both you guys here with your headphones on. Go ahead, Stan. Whoops. My little screen up. There you go. All right, we're ready to rock.
KGVO. No, KGVO, this is Nick. Do you have a question or comment for Talkback? Yep. I knew it. Anytime they skip a line, I know it's, the wrong number.
Oh,
it's like a sales something or other. So, and it sure
I'd like to
was.
talk to you about your overdue credit card.
Yeah. Usually they ask for John, so it's okay. I don't have to worry about it.
I got one at work yesterday. We all did in the office that was supposedly we're having our houses
You're in
foreclosed on by
trouble
the
now, right,
IRS. Yeah.
I love to play those people along. I can keep them for an hour. Waste all their time. It's great. It's great fun. Okay, we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. We have special guests in the studio. Ginny Miriam, Director of Communications for the City of Missoula. Chris Behan, Associate Director of the Missoula Redevelopment Agency. And right now we've been talking about the bridge. So, Dave, good morning. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Yes, I was wondering about the Russell Street. Is there any plans to extend it to the interstate? And if there is, what's the timeline on that?
Well, now Russell Street's already going through a major change because of the new bridge, right?
Right.
It's a really good question, Dave. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Couple of things. First of all, that particular bridge is a state project they've been saving the city and the state have been saving their money for many years to try to upgrade that street.
Well, it's always fun to drive across Russell Street and feel it kind of
swinging
underneath you. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you happen to get stopped up there, being able to see the water where there's supposed to be road.
Yeah.
It needed to happen, and it's coming along very nicely and very quickly. Several times over the years, there's been thoughts of Russell Street going all the way to the freeway. There is a place there, not dissimilar to Grant Creek, where the coal mine road goes up to the Randolph Ranch and to the landfill. That would make some sense to have a on-ramp, off-ramp situation there. Russell Street, because it goes all the way across town, would make some sense because Reserve Street's the only other one that does do that. So Dave's right that it does make some sense for that to happen. What holds it back is that the development along Russell Street north of Broadway is very close to the road, and there's a lot of people living there.
Right.
So how do you there's an expense there that is really both socially and financially. How you do that? Then it's crossing over the widest part of the railroad, and that drops into nearby the cemetery. Then you have to get around that because we're not going to go through that with a hot road, and then try to get up there. So you're looking at an enormous cost, much more than all the bridges we've got.
Now, if that was connecting to the interstate, would that then make it a federal project, or would it be some amalgam of various agencies working together?
I think financially it would take everybody, but I think the biggest partner would have to be the federal government. No one has that. No government entity or private entity has that kind of funding to be able to do that size of a project. So they would have to be certainly a party. I think that probably looking at, there's a master plan for that area north of the railroad that indicates that kind of in the 20-year horizon. Obviously, if there were opportunities, we'd try to jump on them and make that happen. Another way to get to the freeway there is just kind of downstream, if you will, on Broadway. And you can cross a narrower area, much less expensive, and go around the cemeteries much easier. So if you were going to think about that exit being mainly for trucks because it goes into industrial areas, or use that as a truck bypass around some areas, it would make a whole lot of sense. And the modeling looks like as many people would use it. So I think we'll keep an eye on both of those and keep in touch with our congressional delegations and Department of Highways to see if we can keep after it.
Okay, we have another caller. Let's get Dale on the line. Dale, good morning. You're on with Chris Behan. Hi.
Hi.
Might want to turn your radio down, Dale. We're getting the delay in the background, so turn your radio off if you would.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
That's right. Go ahead. There you go. That's better.
It's off now. I was listening to I don't remember the name of the fellow who's given the figures for the use of this bridge to nowhere.
Yeah.
How much that's been used. I don't know.
Chris Behan is his name. He's the Associate Director of Missoula Redevelopment Agency. Go ahead.
Oh, I wonder where he gets his figures for that heavy usage, because I drive that Reserve Street quite often, several times a day, usually, and I've always commented to myself as I went over that bridge, where's the use? I very seldom see a person on that thing. Once I think I saw a couple bicycles once, and maybe a pedestrian once, but
well, in their defense, when most people drive through that thing, they're going about 45 miles an hour, and it's very difficult to stop and see. I realize sometimes you have to wait for the light and that sort of thing, but it's difficult to do that type of observation, especially when you have a counter right on the bridge, right?
Right, Peter. There's two different kinds of counters on there. One that can count bicycles and one that can count pedestrians, and the counts are rising every year. One thing that Jenny mentioned a few minutes ago was that it is part of a trail that goes all the way to Hamilton along the highway. And especially in the summertime with tour groups, bicycle groups in particular, it is part of that whole bicycle tourism thing that the Department of Transportation at the state level and other folks are trying to capture, because there's a large component of that. oftentimes typified by people who spend a lot of money in each community they go by and have gifts and so on sent home. So I think that there is a kind of an economic development component with it too. It fits very well with the trail that the county built to Lolo, and then the state built from Lolo to Hamilton.
So does that help? Go ahead,
I
Dale.
can't help but think every time I go under that thing, what a waste of taxpayers' money. I don't see that use at all.
Well,
I'm not.
Go ahead, Dale.
I'm not going so fast that I can't see people out when I.
Okay.
But they're just not there.
All right. So let's get right down to brass tacks.
Sure.
How much of, say, my tax dollars went in that bridge?
Since you do not live or do business or own property in the urban renewal district,
right,
none of your taxes went into that.
Okay.
All of that was that frosting that I was talking about from within the urban renewal district, which we call urban renewal district 3. We started numbering them a long time ago. That was a mistake because there isn't a 1 anymore.
Right.
But in any case, that's where that came from. So the development along Brooks, the new banks, the huge development at South Crossing, the replaced Kmart and Safeway, their taxes, because of what they did, a lot of their increase in taxes, are helping pay for that bridge.
Sure. And one thing that we didn't mention on air is the fact that that entire project was part of, I think, originally a $5 million Tiger grant. That Tiger is an acronym for something. But the whole idea was to extend that walking trail all the way through Missoula, from Missoula to the Bitterroot, right?
Right, and that actually has happened. That area with the Bitterroot Trail actually connects up to the trail that goes along the railroad, the Bitterroot Branch Line Railroad, and that trail has between the Parks Department, the state, and the Missoula Redevelopment Agency has built trails all the way up to Broadway, and then there's bits and pieces between Broadway and Alder. And then not far away is the North Side Overpass, a pedestrian facility across the north side. So it's almost all the way across, which actually brings up another project
Yes.
I'd love to talk about just a little bit. We had talked originally when we were setting this up about the little conservation area that we're trying to get more people to access down along the river. Well, along with that, there's a small section, a half a block of trail along that railroad that goes down the Bitterroot, just north of Fresh Market, that has never been fixed and never been created into a really good trail. There are lots of not good behavior happening down there. Everything from IV drug use to campfires to people approaching the neighborhood kids.
Right.
So we need to get more people, the public, through there. So however, that little section's a whole bunch more than just a strip of asphalt. There's a lot of problems, and that's why it's never been done. So we're undertaking that. That'll be under bid in the next week, and we'll be doing that this summer.
We'll talk some more about that because you and I did an interview about that a couple days ago.
You're right.
And so we got lots of response on our website as well. So 721-1290 is our number. We'd love to hear from you. Chris Behan joining us here in the studio, Associate Director of the Missoula Redevelopment Agency. So we'll be back with more in a moment.
Oh, I know. Hi, Chris. I'm Scott. I'm the General Manager.
Hey, how you doing? Good.
Nice work. This is good. Hello, lady.
Oh, isn't this cool? I mean,
It
it's
is.
just,
It would be better if Nick and I weren't sick as dogs.
you
Yeah.
guys are really doing well. I think I
We're-
avoided your question. I saw it. Sorry.
No,
about
no,
that.
that's okay. I know we're getting to it. As,
I've been a bureaucrat for a long time. I can do that. Really well.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think we definitely want to talk about that island project.
For whatever reason, because they feel like they're being taxed. But the more you explain it, the better it is. And that's what this show's about, is just trying to give rise to more information.
Well, people, rather than
More
just complain, will
education,
ask
yeah.
more questions of other people. Maybe they'll end up with.
That's why I like
It'll take time, but it'll take time, but you have to keep on doing it. That's actually interesting about the project you're talking about over by the on the north side.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I first got here, I used to run from my house on Butler Creek into town,
Wow.
and I used to go along. I used to try to make my own trail,
Yeah.
and then I had to go where you're talking about. That was the only place I didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
The only place I didn't feel safe, but it was the middle of the day too. But more and more people who move to this town from out of, or move within the town or to this town, cite the trailheads as being one of the key aspects of where they're going to move and why they're going to move.
Oh, I know.
It's actually involved in a lot of people's
Love it.
decisions and development.
I got it.
Exactly.
KGVO Radio, this is Peter. Would you like to make a comment on Talkback this morning?
No, I wouldn't, Peter. This is Jesse Pitt. I would like you to bring up one question, and it's going to be an in-depth answer.
Well, how about if you do it?
No, I don't want to do it because it's going to take a back and forth, which you're very good at. And my
Well,
point.
I have 8 seconds before I have to go back on the air. Hang on. All right, here we go. Okay, we are back on Talkback. So Ginny and I are grooving on this because that's our age of music. I keep getting, well, play some more modern music. Well, I'm an old guy, so I play old music. Anyway, we are back on Talkback. Chris Behan joining us here in the studio, the Associate Director of the Missoula Redevelopment Agency. Could you talk to the gentleman on line one and find out what he wants? Okay, so we're just talking about this West Broadway Island. You just kind of tapped on that a little bit.
Sure.
And I know that people driving past that, going down Broadway, seeing that vast expanse of land that heads toward the river, and they think, oh my gosh, what's back there? Is it the boogeyman? What is it? Well, you're actually developing that now, right? Or not developing, but improving it.
Right. I think that's a good distinction. I think, again, I'm going to go, because I'm an old guy, I'm going to go back in time a little bit.
Go for it. Yeah.
There was certainly a time that most of the areas along the riverfront were similar to what we have right there, with people camping, a lot of inappropriate behavior, perhaps not as intense as it is right now, but and that includes Karis Park. I mean, the river for a long time in Missoula was where our sewer went. That was the trash heap. So in the 1980s, we decided that was an asset for their city, and it's continued to be that, and a huge economic development boom for the properties near and around it.
And how clean that water is now, too.
Yeah. The state's done an amazing job.
Right.
So each step of the way down there, we've had air problems that have related to folks using the riverfront, including Karis Park, which is now an active park, Clark Fork Natural Park, which is less active, and so on. The city purchased the property we're talking about. We're calling West Broadway Island. I hate the name, but we're government people. We had come up with boring names.
Sure, that's all right.
For a long time, it was called Shady Grove Island, which I hope we can get back to, and maybe some other names. But in any case, it's a piece of riparian area right in the middle of where the aquifer receives its recharge from the river. And it's an important piece because it's a piece of nature right in the middle of a really busy downtown. The city acquired that, of what can be acquired. A lot of it's floodplain. The state owns some of it, and so on. And we'd like to get more people to be able to get out there and use it, not as an active park, as you mentioned, but as conservation lands like the North Hills or the Tower Street complex and so on.
But they can still be accessed by people, right?
Absolutely. We want more people down there. We want people to be walking their dogs and taking their kids to the only sand beach in the downtown area and so on. Right now, it's a little scary because there's not only just campers, which have always happened there, but they've become a lot more aggressive. Or some of them have. There's other kinds of things happening there. The police are down there an awful lot. So like those the other areas in downtown, we can help address criminal and inappropriate behavior by increasing the amount of use by the rest of us.
Right.
And more eyes, it becomes less comfortable. And our experience on down the river has been that not only do you decrease that because they're uncomfortable, but you get more enjoyment out of it. This area is unbelievable. You walk across those bridges right now, or you will, and you drop out of the city. It's very comfortable, nice, lots of birds, small animals, and so on. And that's the kind of area we would like people to enjoy.
And I know one of the things also that you're interested in doing is there's a lot of, if you will, trash trees, various things that have grown up there and have flourished because that's what they do. And you're putting more native habitat back in there, right?
Right. Almost all that really dense underbrush and a lot of the taller brush and trees in there were non-natives. And you're right. They were not only choking the river and the irrigation ditch, but they were allowing really dense areas to build hidey holes, if you will, and places that people could camp and so on. So that's been taken out. And with the conservation and open space department at the Parks and Rec Department, division of the Park and Rec Department, we have been putting in lots more native species and so on. So to return it to a place that actually does filter water for us naturally for our aquifer, that people can use and feel good about and reduce the amount of criminal behavior.
Because if you will, the more, quote, forgive the term, regular people that go down there and use that, take their kids, their dogs, whatever, that moves out that other element because they don't want to be around those folks. They want to be alone and left alone and that sort of thing. So they have to find another place to do that. Exactly.
And I think that Mike Brady, the chief of police, said one time about that area and the little trail we're trying to work on, that he will keep extra patrols down there. They will respond quickly to anything that's going on down there, but it's not a problem we can out police. We can't. Police presence is not going to be able to get us out of it. We need to change the culture.
Right.
And this is one step in the way of changing the culture of that area.
And that is a long-term situation, right? As time goes by.
I hope we get a big step right off the bat because we're doing this in winter for two reasons. One, because the irrigation ditch that we're going to cross is off. But the other part is most of the folks that we don't want to be down there aren't during the winter. So if we can get a lot of this project done and kind of make a big change over winter, perhaps we'll take a big step this summer when folks start coming back.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and I know that you spent a lot of time on the phone with a caller that had a question.
We'll get to that after the break.
After we come back, 721-1290 is our number. Chris Behan joining us along with Ginny Miriam from the city of Missoula, and this is City Talk, and we'd love to talk with you at 721-1290.
I don't listen to myself talk, so kick me and push me if you want me to go a different direction.
I wanted to ask you this before we go on air, just in case, to make sure you're okay with it. So, which I'm sure you will. It's basically a basic question, but they asked if TIF and the urban renewal districts pay school taxes, right? And they're saying no, but then they're saying that because of that, that then falls on the residents, where if those organizations aren't paying, that it falls onto the residents to pay those school taxes because they go up, right?
I do. It's coming up to the legislature all the time.
Does it?
And it is a very complicated answer. It rings hollow because, although it's true, it just is complicated and more complicated you get. So,
would you be okay with addressing it?
Yeah, I'll try. I mean, it comes up. It comes up at the legislature every session.
Yeah, I just don't want to put you in a spot. So,
well, the big deal is that the major thing is that schools aren't entirely paid locally. In fact, very little of it comes from local money. It comes from statewide money under the School Equalization Act. Mm-hmm. So if there is any change in that, it's picked up by the entire state. It's one of those things of, would this redevelopment happen without? So that's a lot of it.
Okay.
So I have to do a little blurb here, and then we'll go back in. We have more and more advertisers on our show.
That's good.
This is
a
really
lot.
Good. Yeah, I know. It's great. We love it. We average about a little over 20,000 listeners a day on this show.
Nice.
That's what the survey people tell us.
I'm sure they're right.
Hey, talk about seeing stars. When you go online to jasonbakerteam.com, you'll be seeing a whole bunch of 5-star ratings. Hi, this is Peter Christian for Jason Baker, Keller Williams Real Estate. Listen to this ringing endorsement. Jason and his team are superb in getting properties seen and sold. This process was very smooth and stressless. Their knowledge of the demographics is incredible. I highly recommend them, end quote. In fact, this client gave Jason a full 5-star rating in 4 different areas. Local knowledge, 5 stars. Process expertise, 5 stars. Responsiveness, 5 stars. And negotiating skills, 5 stars. With Jason's accelerated demand program and his instant cash offer and his total satisfaction guarantee, it's no wonder he has people giving him 5-star ratings every day. If you're getting ready to sell your home, take my advice and call Jason Baker, Keller Williams, Western Montana today at 552-4443. That's 552-4443, or visit jasonbakerteam.com, jasonbakerteam.com. And we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. What do you got there, Nick?
Yeah, we had a caller wondering, back to taxes a little bit. He asked, does TIF and urban renewal districts pay school taxes? And he was claiming that, if they don't pay, that those taxes will then fall onto residents to offset the cost. And I know you said this is something that comes up, but it's a little confusing. So I was hoping you could maybe elaborate on it a little bit.
Sure. The relationship between school funding and tax increment financing comes up at every legislative session, oftentimes the city council, and certainly during other issues. So it's a complicated answer to a complicated question, but it's one that people should try to understand more. And if I can shed a little light on it, good. And if not, people should actually try to investigate it more. The basic, let's go back to that layer cake. Part of the frosting is city, county, and local tax mills. Okay. So, taxable levies that are voted by the people for the schools are exempt from tax increment financing as of the last legislature. Actually, it was before, but this more explicit. So, and the district itself, meaning the government part of it, obviously doesn't pay taxes because we're part of the government, but the people in it do pay taxes. And for a period of time, all those local taxes go into that layer of frosting. There is very little impact to if any, to the school budget, because you're looking at areas that are by definition not paying their freight in terms of taxes. In terms of, we're already subsidizing these areas, not only schools but police and fire. So building them up and making them a part of the community is a good investment for all of the taxing jurisdictions. The other piece that comes into it, making it complicated, is the whole idea of would anybody invest in these areas to the point where they are better without the assistance in the infrastructure and so on that we're paying in? So, in terms of what happens to local schools, if there happen to be, and that generally they haven't seen it very much, there is a dip. You got to remember that almost all the money that is actually spent on education, not necessarily the buildings or the facilities or that sort of thing, but for the education comes from the state. So everybody in the state's paying into the school equalization fund, and all students are funded equally across our state. So I guess the answer to the question is yes and no. It is yes, school taxes are part of the tax increment in those small areas. We're trying to build them so that eventually the schools actually have the access to more, and that in terms of our local ability to fund education, that comes from the state, so there is no impact.
Well, now, I do know that we have Mark Thane on with us once a month, and one of the things they're preparing for is their levy that's coming up for their annual expenses, and that it goes directly to the voters to be either approved or denied. And I can't remember the last time Missoulians turned down one of those. So when that is passed, are these tax increment areas, are they exempt, or do they take part in that?
No, they'll take part of that, and the taxes from voted levies as of the last legislature. When the county is figuring out what gets sent to the city in terms of the tax increment financing funds for the urban renewal areas, will deduct the university mills. They'll deduct one other set of the technology schools and university mills, and they'll also deduct the voted levies.
So don't have no fear, right?
Well, no, I think it's a really good question, and I'm sorry that it's as complicated as it is, but you start diving into tax law and it gets out there. But I think that in part the school mills are a good portion of that, and I think so far our local school districts have been more than glad to help rejuvenate neighborhoods that their kids are coming from.
Sure. Well, we're almost up against, but actually I wanted to ask you about one quick thing. I know that there was quite a little bit of a dust up when the Missoula library, the new library, had to come back to you to get more funds because the price of steel had shot so much higher. I know there was a little bit of back and forth there. Where does that stand now? I know it's in the process of being built. So
right. Well, the MRA contributed a very sizable amount of money. That's a very small urban renewal district,
right? And
really didn't. We're going to have to scramble to find the ability to do that every year, as we've committed to. and so they're when they came back, a couple actually came back more than once, but came back one of the times we just had to say there isn't anything left.
Right.
The bucket is empty. If it ever gets something in there, we'd love to help you. But the MRA has a very sizable chunk in that is paying for infrastructure and some other issues.
All right. So we're going to take a break now, 721-1290. Only about 8 minutes left in the show. So if you have a question for Chris Behan, take advantage of this opportunity. He's standing right here. He's not even charging anything for it, which is great. 721-1290 is our number. We're coming right back after this 1 minute timeout.
That's a hard one.
You're doing a great job, by the way. Thank you.
He's wonderful. He knows everything.
Well, that's a tough one.
And then the great thing about Chris is he can also tell you the history.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will.
And
I'll try.
when I was
to
a
ask
news
that
reporter,
before,
Chris
okay?
was the guy to call about Riverfront Triangle.
Hey, thanks a lot. Bye.
Well, back then,
That's right. It's garbage now.
I want to ask you too before I ask. Is there an NDA for the Fox development site? A non-disclosure agreement?
No.
Okay. We can say that. I'll
What
just
would you not
a caller
disclose?
ask.
The
I
state
don't-
here we're going to go. Here's the history of it.
I'll set you up.
All right.
The
We'll do
state,
that when we come back.
the state constitution prohibits it. It's an easy answer.
Well, good. We'll
There's no,
throw you a
there's no
softball.
NDA for anything in the state.
That's what I was wondering.
what
But
was
yeah.
the secret about
It's not-
Who knows?
Who knows what evil lurks in the mind?
Spooky.
The shadow knows. Okay.
Great show.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Talkback this morning. It's been a great hour so far talking with Chris Behan. Now, you had a caller, a question from a caller, Nick. So go ahead.
Yeah, they wanted to know, is there a non-disclosure agreement for the Fox development site?
Absolutely not. Everything that we do is fully transparent. People just have to ask. The Montana State Constitution is extremely clear in what has been called the Sunshine Laws. There is very, very little that happens in your city or state or county government that is not accessible by the public. Almost everything that we can possibly get on the city's website, and I'll put a plug in here. Jenny has put together an amazing amount of material on that website. It's almost overwhelming sometimes that you can actually, the new website that's designed, you can cruise through very quickly. You can find every agreement, every set of minutes, every meeting, everything that happened regarding the Fox site. It's kind of gone quiet because right now the developers are trying to find a huge amount of financing to build that project, and they're talking all over the country to make that happen.
Allow me to ask you, for those who are just going, what? That's where the old Fox Theater used to be, right? So, as well as the old Mustard Seed used to be there. We go there every Sunday after church. But anyway, so tell us what is going in there if plans come to fruition.
All right. There's only a few of us in the room that remember that, Peter.
Yes.
In any case, right now, I think what most people see is a parking lot at the bottom of a hole
Right.
on the southwest corner of Orange and Front. That is city-owned property. It was given to the city many years ago by the Mann Corporation, and we've tried a bunch of ways to try to figure out how to redevelop that site using private money so it'll be a tax-paying entity. And we've got a great project now. It's a very, very large project that they're trying to put together for that site. It will be a full-service hotel, which is the first one in the entire state. That might include some residential on top of it. It will also include a publicly owned conference center, state-of-the-art conference center, to be able to attract the things that we cannot attract with our current facilities around town. So that and parking and so on. That same developer bought the rest of that area down there, so they're going to be redeveloping that at the same time. So it's a big deal.
All right. So can we talk about parking? Because I do know that oftentimes when I go downtown, now it's easier because you have all the parking facilities, but still every now and then you drive around and around and around, you can't find a place to park. So Jenny, is that anything that you can address? Or?
Depends what the question is.
Or can you help me with my cough? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
So how much more parking is available now than there was, say, a couple of years ago downtown? Is there?
sorry, that's out of my zone.
Okay. All
About
right.
500.
About 500 extra spaces.
Well,
Okay.
between the new Rome facility, which is about 140, and the 300 plus at the Park Place on Front and
Mhm.
Patty,
Right.
Those would be new. Obviously, the other parking structure holds 300 also. So, back to what Tim Francis Warden said, we remember when parking wasn't a problem. It's not.
Yes.
But I think that downtown's made huge strides in trying to figure out ways that people can walk, bus, and do other ways to get there.
Okay, let's get Lana on the line. Lana, you're on Talkback. Hi, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi, Lana.
Hi. Back to the bridge. When you have to move it, how much does it cost every time to move this bridge, and who pays for it?
The deal with the state is part of the state permit, and this is what they would put on the hauler as they were part of their expenses. They're going to be charged to utilize the highways. They'll be charged to utilize the pullouts. They'll be charged to move all the lights and wires. And in this case, they'll also be charged for a couple of cranes to go down there and pick that up and move it out of the way until the load goes by. So it will be absorbed into the public charge that the state places on the hauler.
So the state pays for it? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the state will demand that the private hauler will pay for it.
In other words, that's another way to shut down the mega loads.
Well, no, the mega loads can still go through. They just have to pay for it.
But they have to be charged for it.
Well, they're going to be charged
amount.
for it. Lana, they're going to be charged for it anyway.
Not if you didn't have the bridge there.
Well, the removal of that bridge, but there is an alternate way around that, right?
They can go through the fort.
They can go through the fort if they want to.
I think that you would find that if you were to ask those folks that they would say the moving of that little section of the bridge so they can get through is much, much less than moving all the power lines along Reserve Street. So I don't know what those numbers are, but I think that that takes a lot more time and takes more specialized equipment. That's all I can say about that, I guess.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Lana. There you go. So you just sometimes people just don't want to believe you, So
well, that's okay as long as they ask the questions. That's good. They're asking and not making up their own answers.
So we have 2 minutes left in the show. So casting forward now, what else is the MRA involved in?
Peter, more and more we're trying to be involved with affordable housing and low income housing, particularly workforce housing because it fits a little bit better with the tax increment financing model. We've partnered up. We're best at when we're working with partners in the private sector, with nonprofits. Homeward, for example, we've partnered up with the Housing Authority, and we've partnered up with private entities who are partnering. I mean, it all costs so much that we have to put together these elaborate partnerships to make a dent in the affordable housing market. And that's one of the things that we're trying to be more involved in, more cognizant of, and try to emphasize as much as we possibly can.
For those of us who skim the surface, I'm one of them, who skim the surface and look at all that's going on, and we don't really understand all the complexities and, like you say, the partnerships and the organizations that are working together and trying to get all this stuff done. And we see one little thing that sticks out and go, oh, well, see, they're raising our taxes again. So so how do you deal with that? Because I know if someone just wanted to come to a city council meeting one night, then because few people do, they might be able to see how some of this is actually done, right?
Absolutely, and certainly the Missoula Redevelopment Agency board meetings are public. They're well advertised and happen almost every third Thursday.
Sure,
folks are they're also on MCAT, so
cool.
There's no reason that people can not find out about things. And you know what? And if they have questions, our phone numbers are all public too. So are our email addresses.
Let's have the email address and the phone number just for.
Well, my personal phone number.
Oh, here we go.
I know.
Here we go.
Whoops. All right. It's 552-6155.
6155. How about your website?
The website is ci.missoula, spelled out, .mt.us. And from there, you can get to anything in the whole city.
Right. And
you just click on MRA.
Great. Well, awesome. It's been a pleasure having you both here. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for doing this.
You bet. And we'll do it again sometime. Hey, Mark Thane is going to be joining us next Monday.
9 to 10.
From 9 to 10. We'll have open phones from 8:30 until 9. You guys have a great weekend. Go Grizz. Cats are coming to town. And we will see you Monday morning at 6 on Montana Morning. Have a great day.
Came that close to